Hey, what's up, American history students? Welcome to day 17 of our e-learning experience. It is, Wednesday, April 15th, would be tax day. But unlike any other year during my lifetime, tax day does not fall in April this year. It's been postponed like everything else. All these other things that have been postponed, we're all upset about. I don't think anyone's upset about tax day being postponed. So if you haven't filed your taxes or your family hasn't, you guys still got time. It's not till July 15th this year. So there's, a little silver lining to all the dark skies we've been having, literally and figuratively. Um, what happened to that summertime weather we had last week, man? It's been cold out this week, cold and a little gray. So hopefully, well, I guess the sun was shining a little bit this week, and maybe it'll shine again today, and we should be having a warm up coming soon. So that's good news on the horizon. Um, we're speaking about, American history. And this is a time period in American history that we've been talking about over the last couple weeks, and are going to continue this week. That I love it. I think is really cool. I think the 1950s is a really interesting time. As a fan of popular culture, music, movies, literature, there's a lot of great material that came out of the 1950s. Not just made in the 1950s, but then there's lots of great movies and things out there about the 1950s. Nostalgia for the 1950s is a big deal, even in our modern times. That's why you see like these 1950s diners, right? Um, it's cool. It's cool stuff, right? Now, again, there was lots of problems. I wouldn't want to live in the 1950s, and we'll get to that in a minute. Um, but to look back and look at some of the cool stuff that came out in the 1950s, it's undeniable, right? If you've seen any kind of movies like Back to the Future or Pleasantville or Grease, right? These are all set in the 50s. So all that fun stuff that's, funny stuff that takes place in those movies, that's the 1950s. Um, so, uh, let's talk about, before we get on to the topic of the day, the plan for tomorrow. And I know some of you have probably already seen this in some of your other classes, but a new requirement for this term is the weekly Zoom meetings that we're supposed to have with all of our classes. I'm looking forward to this, especially with this class, because the discussion boards, the question of the days that we've been having have been great. So to get us all together and to be able to see each other and speak in real time, I think that's going to be fun. But that's happening tomorrow. Um, the days of the week are for each discipline, and we're social studies, and so Thursday is the social studies day. And so the plan for tomorrow is 11 a.m. We will be holding a Zoom meeting, and we're going to be doing it with all the American history classes. That means both 4th hour and 6th hour American history for me, but then also Johnny White has a couple of American history classes that we're just going to get together and have a big old family meeting, talk about the 1950s, the Cold War, see what they should be studying pretty much the same things, but it'll be interesting to get everybody together and see how it goes, right? So look out for that. There will be, let's go to the Blackbaud bulletin board. There will be an announcement posted on the Blackbaud. I'm going to try and get this message and the link to the Zoom meeting to you as many ways as possible, so we can get as many people as possible to join us. I think 11 a.m. is a pretty doable time for everybody. If not, let me know. If there's some reason you can't make it, just let me know. We can excuse you, but we really want to try and get everybody in there that can make it. But like I said, there will be a link and a message about that on the bulletin board. I'm going to be sending it out in emails and Blackbaud messages. I'm going to try and create an assignment so that you can just click on the link right there. As many ways as possible to get into the Zoom meeting tomorrow, because I want as many people as possible to participate. So look out for that. Thursday, tomorrow, 11 a.m., and that will be the schedule going forward. Every Thursday at 11 a.m., American History Zoom meeting. But today's Wednesday, and so let's take a look at what we're working on for today. So I mentioned the 1950s was a weird time, and if you go to the Topics tab, which I showed you yesterday, again, this is where you always find the topic that we're studying, the current topic, as well as the page numbers for any assignments that we have. If we go to, click on this topic, we see today's section is Chapter 20, Section 2. But, I try to put a picture And in this case, I actually got a playlist too, Duck and Cover. If you weren't around for term 4 to see the Duck and Cover video, do yourself a favor and watch that. But this picture kind of shows us, what a typical family, at least, typical family life was like in the 1950s. This is like Leave It to Beaver, right? If you guys know that show. Again, another great pop culture, thing from the 1950s, artifact from the 1950s. This is what people look like and act like in the 1950s. Everyone was in black and white in the 1950s. Not really, but this is what you think of. You think of 1950s, you think of the, perfect family with the perfect haircuts and the perfect, house and the perfect style of dress, and everyone just kind of was the same, right? That was a big part of the 1950s, conformity. And for some people that was great. But for other people, that was, not what we wanted. And there's always that backlash, right? So you had people, things go back and forth. You had the Great Depression, World War II, horrible stuff. And after that's over, people in the 1950s, a lot of people say, we don't want any of that drama. We want to just have a normal, boring life, like these people, right? And so they do. And that's what a lot of Americans do. But then you have this other group of people that are growing up in this time period and saying, this sucks. This is boring. I want excitement. I want change, challenge, struggle, right? And so that's what we start to see, this back and forth. And, as we move into later decades, the 60s and 70s, a lot of the things that came about during those decades were a, backlash to this of the 1950s, which this was a backlash to war and depression of the 40s and 30s. So you can see how it just goes back and forth. And so we have an assignment again, chapter 20, section 2. If we download it, you'll see it is the mood of the 1950s. What was the mood of the 1950s? Pretty happy, right? Not a lot of stress, right? People just wanted to watch their movies, 3D movies, or listen to music and just enjoy the good life, right? Live in the suburbs. But then also there were some people who, rebelled, right? And we start to see rebels like this guy here, Elvis, right? Or the beatniks like Jack Kerouac, right? And then, of course, we have our 4 questions. And these are pretty easy questions. Again, those are always going to be under the assignments tab over here. Assignments tab right there, right? Where you'll find our reading in the questions, right? And then also our question of the day. And I want to take a look at this question of the day real quick. Let's see. Question of the day is, if you were a teenager living in the 1950s, do you think you'd be more the conformist, aka silent generation type? Nothing wrong with that, right? You want to just live a comfortable life, drama-free, right? Do your job, do your thing, right? Or would you be more like Elvis Presley? Elvis Presley, right? Elvis. Love Elvis. Would you be more like Holden Caulfield? And hopefully some of you know the reference to Holden Caulfield. If not, he's in the reading. Holden Caulfield is the main character in my favorite book of all time, The Catcher in the Rye, published during the 1950s. He hated phonies. Or the beatniks, like Jack Kerouac. The beatniks, the kind of like the hippies of the 1950s, if you know that reference. Also on here, I have a link for a 1950s timeline. This has nothing to do with the question of the day yet, but it's a pretty cool thing I wanted to just share with you. It is from the textbook. And it's just a couple pages from the textbook that looks like this. Right? It just, this is just the intro to chapter 20, the post-war years at home. Why does it have a pink flamingo? Because they were, again, this was the conformist thing, right? People were trying to be, cute, right? But they all had the same pink flamingos on their lawns in their cookie-cutter suburban homes, right? This is the 1950s, right? And there's this interesting timeline. I just wanted to share it with you because on the second page of this, they show 2 big references to St. Louis. This guy, Chuck Berry, who invented rock and roll, and he's from St. Louis, right? And then this, right? The growth of suburban St. Louis, Missouri from 1950s to 1960. You know, city of St. Louis was once one of the top 5 cities in America in population, and now it's not like even in the top 20. Where'd all the people go? To the suburbs. They all left the city and moved out to the suburbs. So the question of the day, which are you more comfortable with? The boring, predictable, quiet suburban life, right? Conformity, going with the flow, not causing any problems, not causing any stress? Or are you more of a rebel like Chuck Berry or Elvis Presley or anyone else? Again, I know how I am. I want to know how you are. So make sure you answer that question of the day and take a look at the reading and answer the questions. And if you're asking yourself, why does Chris have, an Elvis Presley record laying around? I have lots of records laying around. Right? Look at this. I'll show you over here. Right? I got a whole shelf of records laying around, right? Old records, right? They're cool. They are cool. Don't tell me they're not. I love the 1950s. I love the 60s, the 70s. These are my decades. These are my babies. I don't have a turntable. Guess where it's at? School. Yeah. Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take it easy. Peace.